Would you like to see the Oilers go get Mitch Marner as a free agent? Do you think there's a world where the Oilers get Mitch Marner as a free agent?
Would I like to see it? Yeah, I would. I would take any 100-point player on the Edmonton Oilers. Like, why would you not? You know what I mean? I think the Oilers have a good enough culture that they can bring in basically any player in the league and he will work for them in the culture side of things. Maybe not always on ice, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Can they afford him? Probably not, because I would imagine he's going to want 12, 13 million. But they did try and get Mikko Rantanen at the deadline. That is a legit thing. Obviously, there was a bit of the rumors before, too, from, what was his name? Strickland, I think it was, who was saying, if Rantanen gets to the offseason, he wants to go to Edmonton. So I do think there could be some legit interest. I think the Oilers have a few things they need to sort out in-house first before they worry about Mitch Marner.
Yeah, listen, making the pieces work for Mikko Rantanen, yes. I would have entertained the idea at least and been like, okay, maybe that's worth sacrificing the bottom part of your roster because he's just such a difference maker. Rantanen, he's just too perimeter. He's not a driver. He's a high-end complementary player. And I even think the team that gives them $10, $11, $12 million, I don't think they're going to feel like they're getting scorned at all because I think they're going to get a very productive player who out of Toronto and with the right mix will find a way to make an impact in the regular season and the playoffs. And he's a great player. He's going to be an Olympian next year. I think there's no doubt about that. I also do think people were throwing the Four Nations thing at me last night as I disagreed with this. He was bad early in that Four Nations.
Yes, he was.
He had a good final, which is funny because it's almost the inverse of what he does in Toronto, right? Where he's great early on, then he flames out at the end. But I don't know. He had a great final, but there was a reason he got pulled off McDavid's line for a big part of that tournament. The other side of why I don't want to see the Oilers do this is just because of how much they'd have to sacrifice. So I went and did some back of the napkin math here, Liam, and then Aaron, in a second, I'll ask you to flash up the lines, but just give me a moment here. Next season's cap picture for the Edmonton Oilers. Back of napkin math kind of stuff here. 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, and 2 goalies under contract gives them roughly, depending on who gets subtracted down to the minors to bring the roster to this size, gives them roughly $11 million in cap space, Liam, all right? They're pretty much going to have to put 10 of that towards Evan Bouchard in all likelihood. So let's just not argue about that. Let's just say it's 10 for Bouchard. So you have $1 million basically to add some forwards. And listen, you're probably going to want to bring back the roster I was looking at had Max Jones on there, but there was no Perry and no Connor Brown. So you bury one of them, you bring back Perry for league man, you give Connor Brown another 1.3. And then again, you're finding a way to make things work a little bit here cap wise. But let's say the Oilers decide ahead of July 1st, they go, you know what? We want to make the Mitch Marner thing work. We're going to keep Bouchard. And like whoever was tweeting me last night about this, they could make it work for Rantanen. So why couldn't they make it work for Marner? So in order to get some cap space, who do you have to sacrifice? Well, let's start. You're going to trade Adam Henrique and Victor Arvidsson. And honestly, based off the season those guys are coming off of, you're maybe getting a pick back, but you're probably just dumping those guys for free because of the no movement clauses and just hoping they can go somewhere. So you dump those two and you replace them with league minimum players. Let's say in this scenario, again, you are dropping Henrique and Brown for nothing and then somehow getting both Perry and Brown for league minimum, all right? In that crazy world, which is very far-fetched, you've freed up about $5 million in cap space. So now with Bouchard signed and the right pieces subtracted and those moves, which again, we just agreed are far-fetched, you have about $6-7 million, okay? Then you need to get rid of Evander Kane. I was going to say you buy him out, but again, we're doing blue sky fairy tale world where you trade him for nothing and replace him with, let's say Matt Savoy takes his spot on the roster, which will probably happen anyways. So you do that. Liam, you've still only freed up $10 million in cap space. That's not enough to get Mitch Marner in free agency unless he's taking a big discount. But you are not getting, you could sacrifice Henrique and Arvidsson and Kane off this roster, bring in replacement level guys or league minimum guys, I should say, and you still do not have enough money for Mitch Marner. But let's say Mitch Marner does sign for the $10 million you have found a way to save, and Brown is league minimum and Perry is league minimum. This is the lineup you're basically looking at next season. You could swap Thomas Ecker-Hudson for Savoy. Hand up, missed Matt Savoy on this. So you swap Thomas Ecker-Hudson, you put Savoy on your third line. So you're rocking a top 6 for the podcast listeners. That's McDavid centering Marner and Hyman. I like that line. That's a good line. That's a great line. Who am I kidding? Draisaitl would center Nugent-Hopkins. Okay. Janmark would center, let's call it Savoy and Brown. That's mildly concerning, I would say, as a third line. Don't love that. Your
Yep.
fourth line would then be Kapanen centering Tomasek and Perry, and Hudson's your 13th forward. Like, dude, your bottom six right here is depleted, is it not?
Yeah, this team sucks. I would not.
This team
I would.
sucks.
I would not be doing it. I like Mitch Marner. I think he's a good player, and I would take 100-point players on this team all day. But it just doesn't work. The others don't have enough money to do it. Even with the cap going up the year after, I don't know what even the numbers would be or what it's supposed to go do that. Like, obviously, we get a little bit better, and they could add a few more players. But why are you wasting so much money to go and do that? You can just keep all those players you said. Just
Yeah,
keep him
you
all.
could just
Like,
keep
I
all those.
keep Kane for another year. Like, we'll see what he's about. Obviously, we'll see. But he's obviously played really, really well. Marner's just not worth it with what you would have to move on from. If the others had the money, I would do it. They don't.
Totally.
So there you go.
Totally. Yeah, and listen, like if Darnell Nurse was signed properly in the past, and if Evan Bouchard was signed properly, and you didn't have to pay him 10 because you did the right thing and did the 6x6 or 7x7 a couple years early, like then maybe you could chart a path to it. But like without Marner, Aaron, you can flash up lineup number 2, which again doesn't even have Savoy in this lineup. But you go Nuge, McDavid, Hyman. We know that line works. Podkolzin, Kane, Draisaitl. Maybe it ends up being Savoy up there instead, and you're sheltering guys down again. I kind of messed up not putting Savoy on these. That's on me. But then you have Henry, Arvidsson, Brown, Janmark with one of Hudson or Tomasek with Perry, or you have neither of Hudson or Tomasek in your lineup because you have Savoy, or you've brought back Kapanen at league minimum for another year. Like, again, these two lineups compared to each other without Matt Savoy in either one, it's very clear to me which one wins you more hockey games. And I get that Mitch Marner would instantly be the Oilers' third or fourth best forward behind McDavid, Draisaitl, and he's better than Hyman. He'd be their third best forward without a doubt.
Yeah.
The juice just isn't worth the squeeze when you look at the drop-offs you have to take everywhere else in this lineup. It's just not. Again, we're seeing right now, Liam, the Oilers are in such a good spot because their depth is outscoring the other team at an insane clip. Why would you want to sacrifice that and move out a bunch of good depth guys? And I get that Arvidsson is healthy scratch right now and not helping you contribute and all that. But like, again, you would have to be dumping guys for nothing, praying guys like Brown and Perry come back at league minimum. I don't see this Marner thing. I don't understand. Like, the people who are throwing it out there are just shooting from the hip so people pay attention to them on Twitter, I think. Like, there's just no logic behind thinking the Oilers could do that.
I think it's just triggered from the Rantanen stuff and the sign of trying to get such a star player. But also the part of Rantanen too that I think people are forgetting is if the Oilers were trying to trade for him, they could have got him at 50% retained, which is what, $2 million? Wouldn't it end up being something ridiculous
so it would
like
have fit
that?
in easily this year.
Totally. And then you figure out the extension and go from there. But they're very different players too. One's a cup champion, one's a guy that everyone's pissed off about in the chat that we're even talking about. So
what's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.